What's up, everybody? It's the Blazer King with King's Critiques, and I wasn't sure what to do with this project, but I ended up deciding to script it, obviously. But it was requested to do a review on this, and I saw a decade ago or so, and with it being Mother's Day month, I said, you know what? Sure, since the trigger of the entire plot is the main character's mother is taken too soon from him. What show? Well, if the title of the video doesn't tell you, I'm talking about Erased, which is a crime drama with time travel aspects to it, and honestly, I think it's one of the things that first sent me on a big binge into, time travel related shows, things like Steins Gate and what's not. And, well, I'm wearing the Oshino coat shirt again because it's close enough to what fits the vibe, right? Right. That said, let's get into it. Whenever I type down of the whole of it, and added bit I didn't script down. I basically went over the entire series as it went, because I have a bad habit of doing that when I'm scripting, but that's also what makes things more fun in my opinion. So, I'm scared to get to the heart of my own mind. The story started off with a mangaka about to hit the old age of 30, being turned away from what hope he had for a job, a career, a publisher, only to be stuck as a pizza delivery man. And it was well out on one of his deliveries when we first saw something out of the ordinary from him. A spider sense. A danger sense, if you would, taking over as he noticed a truck pass by where the driver had seemingly fallen asleep, and in the process of saving a child who's trying to cross the street, he himself got struck by a car while riding on a scooter. Also, the fact that he says, is that a Gen Y joke to his co-worker who had said something to him at least twice, dates the show, seeing as how we're on lower level intellect of Gen Z now. I know, some of y'all got it up there, but the majority? That said, the driver he had grabbed the hand of to pull at the wheel actually had been dead already. An unfortunate circumstance, to be sure, especially when you're a truck driver, and that's never a good thing to happen to you or anybody else. But it was shortly after waking up in the hospital in a mini conversation with said co-worker, we get to find out he is fully aware of his time travel abilities to some extent. Later on, after being discharged, he came home to find his mother there, of her own accord, finding out, probably from his co-worker, what had happened. And also, something I'll say now, since I wouldn't get the chance to for a while, without a live reaction, she's kind of a baddie, honestly. Like, there's that weird art aspect of her that is kinda not that hot, in my opinion. But otherwise, yeah, she's kinda hot. Anyway, she's also an oddball, and something I didn't note down in the script I will add into here. The term yokai comes up a lot. No reason at all whatsoever. Totally not just motherly things. Asking if he remembers about a girl who went missing when he was young, and then saying they tried to help the kids forget, which, to be fair, why would you even bring it up then? Anyway, the more he thought on it, the blame immediately went to some guy him and some of the other kids hung around because it was the most obvious. But what if it wasn't him? What if the sense for danger that has grown over the years has to do with that being an unresolved issue? It was that exact line of thinking that Satoru's mother began having after seeing an abduction almost take place while they were out shopping, and while she was laying some groundwork for some investigating, the thing that triggers the entirety of the plot happened. She got struck by a smooth criminal. Because she didn't lock the door properly, and I'm bad at that myself sometimes, but be better when trying to solve an old case. I mean, honestly, you're investigating in an old cold case, you're trying to find out a criminal from something that happened many years ago. Who says the criminal isn't around spying on your ass? Shortly after leaving work, Satoru crossed paths with the same scumbag that caused the incident all those years ago, and made the discovery, knowing exactly what had happened. However, he got caught red-handed, literally, and in the midst of being arrested, his fight or flight kicked in, and upon nearly dying, he was sent back almost 20 years, and this is where our story truly begins. And obviously, from here, I should mention, spoilers are aplenty ahead. Even though we already had a little bit of a spoiler, that was only episode 1. Everything else is the remainder of what had happened. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want the spoilers, go watch yourself before checking out on my review of the entirety of my rewatch. Now, in his revival to his childhood years, before the aforementioned abduction happened, he was dealing with a confusing situation, still trying to figure out exactly what was going on. When getting up to go to the nurse's office, he was questioned by one of his classmates where he was going. I'm only mentioning this because I half remember that the kid had some connection to things long term, but I could be wrong. Perhaps the plant by his abductor is what it was. Suppose we'll know when the rewatch commences. But we come sometime later to his confrontation with Hinazuki, the girl that got taken from him in his class all those years ago. Well, one of them. Watching a bruise on her during the school day, trouble at home perhaps, or something else. In any case, he does use his memories of his old life to decide to befriend her. After all, why else would he have been called to this time period, if not to fix an issue connected to his mother? While trying to get closer to her, he comes up short. But his smart friend does tell him to read some students' essays from a previous project within. While reading, it seems as if a kid I could relate to Kaio's thoughts to an extent. Wishing to live on an island alone. I don't have an abusive mother or anything, but as far as a desire to get away from people, I get that. After a second encounter with Hinazuki, the first instance of what bothered me about how things ended happens, but we'll get to that much later. Otherwise, he remembers what was the last time he saw her originally. This time, things were gonna be different. And, while slightly true, the first time he couldn't find her after a little argument and some time spent talking to the person who took the blame for her disappearance originally, he ended up at her home to find bad signs. But, at least for the time being, she was alive, as he went about trying to help her out from a shed she was in, resting after being abused even, only for the age-old story of the abuser coming to get her and bring her inside, and Kaio giving the excuse that she fell. While her mother might not have killed her, it definitely didn't help. A parallel to this I'm thinking of now was the same kind of situation that bitch Marina from Takapi was in, but Kaio didn't take it out on others, more sank into her own depression. That kind of thing makes an easy target for the wrong kind of people, unfortunately. Shortly after it was made worse due to Satoru finding her how he did, and apparently the teacher knows what's happening but can't do much about it. Even in the late 80s, CPS and cops didn't do the job right all of the time, unfortunately. And, to top it off, Hinazuki got blamed for stealing just because she's poor, only end up finding it herself in her own desk. Due to somebody planting it, probably. Sounds like a cop. Or so I say. But, she admitted the girl who blamed her had hated her for a couple of years now, only for Satoru to show her a beautiful sight later on that would make her feel better about things. You know, Tsundere fashion, she didn't accept it for what it was in a very clear sense, but at least she enjoyed it. Which, on topic of taking her places, he had a good idea to take her out shortly before their birthdays, in hopes that it might help save her. However, her bitch of a mother had issues with that, but luckily his mother came in for the rescue before either of them were struck during the argument taking place. Though, anytime he thinks of her as cute, he corrects himself with, "You're 29, which, while technically right now, he isn't, and she would be too if she had survived. So is there anything wrong with feeling embarrassment to the idea of liking her at the time? Though, while at the museum together, before their friends joined in, he does tend to think that the situation had repeated itself again from many years ago. Also, a side thought, Man should stop speaking out what he's thinking. Since child reversion, he's done that so many times, and half of them very embarrassing. But sometime after that, the day had arrived. Their birthdays. And Kyle was saved, allegedly. Everyone already at Satoru's house for their combined birthdays. On one end, he had a different experience than back then. On the other, it was probably the best birthday she had ever had. However, the next day, Kyle wasn't there, as his whole goal seemed like it had fallen through. Days later, with his own depression hanging over his head, he went by the Hinazuki residence by coincidence. And in this timeline, it seemed it was indeed her own mother that finished her off, instead of who the bigger suspect might be. Though, before even getting a chance to try again, he was now sent back into his own current time. Mom still dead, allegedly Kyle too, so he didn't, in fact, fix anything. Attempt 1, over. Now, to make things worse with him returning to his current age, getting in contact with his manager, and the man sold him out. Just goes to show, if you're being framed for anything, don't trust anyone. After being saved by his female coworker, ironic I know considering what I just said, who I suppose was trustworthy, he realized what he did in attempt 1 worked out and decided to dig deeper in things. And how did it work out? Well, in the news reports of Kaio's death, she had aged since the last time, so it means something did change his present time. In the meantime, the manager told the friend that did help him that they're all on the same side, which, bullshit. The man sold him out to the cops first chance he got, which, again, following where Satoru was going, investigating everything he could with the limited space he could go, the scumbag manager tried calling the cops, and the co-worker, who we will refer to from here on as Irie, made him pay for it, which justified, honestly. Shortly after that, Irie and him went to chat somewhere more private, and her backstory, while sort of sad, is the dumbest reason for someone to lose their job and wife. I'm not even gonna go into it. It's the minorest detail of the story that comes up like one time later. And it's just kind of dumb, honestly. But, though, things with Irie also didn't go very far, unfortunately, since the abductor and murderer took her out as well by burning her home down after their chat while she was inside of it. Though she survived, it tells Satoru not to get into contact with anyone he cares about indefinitely. Though that only leads him to contacting a news reporter, an old friend and co-worker of his mother's who trusts that he is not as bad as other news outlets might be mentioning and sharing secrets about the whole of the case with him that was going on. Which, shortly after that at the hospital, Irie woke up, and my lord, cops really paint whatever story makes their job easier sometimes, huh? Back to Satoru. The reporter left him to look at his own reports from the case all those years ago, and found some very annoying but helpful information. Hang on to that meeting with Irie after she escaped the hospital with a good old bait and switch, though that all fell on its face as he was being taken off by the police, and the real criminal watched from the side. It was time for round 2, trying to save Kaio. With round 2 starting, he comes back at the point of the museum, hoping this time he can right his wrongs from before. However, this run has one change above all others. The smart friend of his starts to question if he is him. After some banter and time progression, Kenya, the smart friend, wants to help Satoru out, even if he's unsure why this is happening like it is himself. Their plan? Hide her, and make sure she's safe, and eventually adding in one of their other friends, trying to keep an eye out on him as well, because their friend also kind of looked like a girl. Honestly, even with all the hectic stuff going on nowadays, for many years there often has been times where that's just kind of how things went. But the reason they had to protect their friend was because there was an unfortunate situation considering the string of killings that took place all those years ago. Their male friend was also involved in this string of little girls disappearing, probably to hide his tracks. But soon after, the killer seemed to have found out where she was hiding. Luckily, she was double hidden, so she couldn't be found, and very quickly, she probably understood why she was being hidden. Though she didn't mention it to him in the morning at first, there was a funny bit of a note being left in the food he gave to her that was from his mother. So apparently, the mother knows. Later that night, however, she did tell Satoru and Kenya, soon discovering the bag that was left after the culprit couldn't find her, and all of the kidnapping and other crime-related gear was uncovered. Deciding to leave that hideout, they just went to his home, and his mother, being the yokai she is, she knew what was going on from the beginning pretty much. Though soon she took letting others know of Kaio and being alive in her own hands, there was a chance of that being in Satoru's plan as well, especially confronting the mother the next day, soon getting proof of assault on Sachiko, the mother's, person, if not Kaio. This was the next best thing that could have happened, in theory, though even with that, it needed some extra help to resolve the situation at hand as it was. But that doesn't help solve the whole of the case now, does it? But at least Kaio is now saved, guaranteed. No, that didn't solve the case as a whole, however. Now he has his other friend and some girl he doesn't know to keep them safe, to shift the track of things on how they were before. Inazuki was just the biggest obstacle considering her mother as well. While stalking the actual girl who was in danger, he ran into some trouble, but also helped avert disaster at the same time. Being caught by his mother, but also being taken home by his teacher, in a successful manner of things. However, in that, he soon discovered a red flag for anyone having a bunch of candy in a glove box. Might as well be a passenger in a white van. Which, side note, maybe we should just put a free blank sign on the side of a white van or something, and just advertise to, scalpers or something. That'd be a good way to take them out, Free Pokemon cards, discount Pokemon cards, or something like that, and then you'll get them to come in and be like, hey, take a look at my wares, and then just, BAM! Kidnapping anybody is strictly against the law, illegal, and this is only a joke. However, if you can do whatever you can to take the scalpers out of the community on anything, you didn't hear it from me. Back on topic, they tried talking to the girl they're not friends with directly, and two of them crash out on her about different topics before the uninvolved friends got involved, for better or worse. It's for the better. Though, while he thinks his plan is going off without a hitch, he does begin to consider that something might be wrong, changing for the worse even. However, that situation being the worst isn't for the one girl he argued with, it was unfortunately himself. The second time he's been face to face with the true villain, which, in that last fight, he seemed to have lost. After 15 years passed since then, it was revealed that while he didn't die at that point, he had been comatose the entire time, and unfortunately not able to remember the full of what had happened, going through seeing old friends welcoming him back to the world of the living, and catching up on the last 15 years. In addition to what is high-key my biggest trigger, even though in a way it made sense, being greeted by an adult Kaio to update him on her life as well. Married, with a kid, and honestly the story would have been a near perfect ending if she was single. Perhaps not waited for him, but for the story's sake at the same time, they build up essentially a whole romance between them in his attempt to save her. Yes, I know they were kids, but it was obvious. Just for her to have the life she did, which, good for her, but a low blow by the writers to build all that and crash it down. Even so, she was written to thank him for allowing her to have that future, marrying and conceiving with his old friend. Who also, I guess, kind of got the life that he deserved as well. because it was that friend that looked like a girl when they were kids. So while it's a trigger, at least I understand it, and it went in some sort of a positive direction for that whole situation for him. Soon, while talking with a fellow hospital goer, he once again meets his old teacher, who is there to check in on Satoru's well-being. Surely it's as innocent as that, right? Well, be that may or it may not be, the two began to spend time together with this ill girl Satoru had befriended as well. Soon, not having much of a choice to go and have a private conversation on the roof, and with Satoru's brain working, the gears began to turn. Maybe some memories returning. Heck, maybe they already had. Now, left alone on the roof with his old teacher, the one responsible for everything. How is he going to handle things? A tactful maneuver seen through, an admission of another murder he plans to do in mind, quickly followed by another. Satoru confined to a wheelchair and no other weapon than words. But, even at a disadvantage, Satoru moved about, monologuing in a similar way to how Naruto might to save himself and his friends. But in this instance, it had to be a battle of the minds, with our hero racing off to his own death, only to be stopped by the villain himself. One of those times where the villain needs the hero alive to continue to have meaning and purpose in their life. Soon showing flashbacks of several times he could have killed Satoru, only to relent. In the final moments of the confrontation, it was soon found out that the roof incident was planned the whole time. Satoru surviving, and Yashiro, his teacher, being caught red-handed, basically. Satoru surviving, and Yashiro, his teacher, being caught red-handed, basically. A few years later, Satoru's dream had come true, and instead of being an aspiring mangaka, he's succeeding, even having his own anime adaptation for his project, and everyone he strived to save, whether it be from death or being jailed, was also a successful attempt. But what of meeting up with a coworker he would never have? Well, in a way it's a bit creepy itself, all things considering. That is one of the loose ends the writers considered to give him some form of happy ending. But it is Japan, and the rules are different. Believing in someone is a weird phrase, isn't it? The perception of what belief is, the thought of what doubt is. The covers of books can only be judged by just that. One's perspective in thinking that you can trust someone who looking like they're a good person because they're in charge is never a great idea, in the same light as judging someone for looking a bit creepy or sounding weird is never a good idea. I really did enjoy this rewatch for what it was worth. The ups, the downs, the drama of it, recalling some things as I watched that I otherwise wouldn't have. Plus, the time binging it and writing the script was honestly much more fun than a live reaction, since I was able to get this done in time before Mother's Day, which of course I'll be releasing it on, so happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there, and for those of you with mothers that, you don't see much anymore, don't forget to call your mother if they're alive. And if not, well, visit the gravesite, or at least think of her if you're unable to. Similar to how I've been uploading my reactions to Oshinoko from last season, a majority of events happen because of the death of the main character's mother, and all's well that ends well with this story. Thank you to the user who requested this on TikTok. I'm not fully sure how I'm going to upload this on there, but even if I have to break it up into parts, I'm going to get it up since it was their idea. In similar fashion, as I always say, suggest things to me, and if they're good enough and short enough, if I've already watched them, I'll get to it when able, especially if the theme carries into something up and coming. Take June, for example. Recommend me some Yuri or even Yaoi stories, and I could check them out for Pride Month. I already have a backed up catalog, but something I could script wouldn't be a bad idea either. And while I said I don't think I'll be able to upload the whole of this on TikTok, honestly my recording time says otherwise. But suppose we'll see after I edit this together. Because I still gotta at least put some music in the background. for any times I might be pausing. And whether or not I put something on the side of me here just to clear out my ugly room, well, we shall see. But, that all being said, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the other channels in the description, ring all them bells, as I said, but it's the intro, I'll say it again. Don't forget to comment down below things I should check out this season, next season, or in general. Facebook, Twitch, Blue Sky, TikTok, Patreon, and the Twitch, and the Discord, I guess, since I think that's in the description. I don't remember. Regardless, you know how I do. I know I just said the YouTube outro, but hey, this is being uploaded to all platforms anyway, so hit all the buttons. And that all being said, it's been the Blazer King with King's Critiques. So, ta-ta for now. Happy Mother's Day.